Hey everybody, Greg Roberts here again with Endurance OCR. I'm talking about my training for the Tough Mudder Infinity coming up this August. Just a reminder, I'm also doing a Tough Mudder Classic at the end of April outside of St. Louis, and we're doing it to raise money for Battle Buddy 3 Gun. So please head over to enduranceocr.com, click on the button in the middle of the homepage, and it'll take you over to the link for the GoFundMe to donate to that effort. So please continue to help us out there. Appreciate all the donations so far. Wanted to talk last week. I mentioned that I had a little bit planned for heart rate training and heart rate zone monitoring. And I was in such a good mood and I didn't want to go down the negative side because I had some concerns about it. And the nice thing is when kicking the can down the road, it gave me a little bit of an opportunity to think a little bit more about how, while I don't love everything about it, there are some aspects that I think I am going to be able to incorporate into my personal training. So I wanted to walk through first what is heart rate monitoring, or what is heart rate zone training. It is where you calculate your maximum heart rate and then you identify the intensity that you want to stay in for that time frame for your workout, and then you just monitor your heart rate instead of going by how you're feeling or what you're expecting the intensity to be. You monitor your heart rate. Usually it'll be a small range that you need to stay within, or ideally it would be a small range that you need to stay within. If your heart rate drops below the bottom of that range, you speed up. If your heart rate increases above the top of that range, you slow down. It's pretty simple and straightforward. The first concern that I have is really identifying what the maximum heart rate is. And there are two ways that I've seen for identifying the maximum heart rate. The first one is pretty simple and straightforward. It makes sense that there would be something out there like this as a general rule of thumb, but the accuracy of it is what I question, and that is you take 220, subtract your age, and that becomes your maximum heart rate. Something like that, it's simple, but it's almost too simple. And one of the problems that I have is it treats everybody of the same age the same, and it doesn't take into consideration any differences in genetics or anything that might cause a different maximum heart rate. So every 40-year-old has a maximum heart rate of 180. Every 20-year-old has a maximum heart rate of 200, and it just doesn't seem accurate. The other way that it seems like it would be more accurate, however, my concern with it would be the safety of me performing this would be you run exercises and you physically exhaust yourself to the point where you can go no further. One example that I saw of this was you do a warm up and then you do wind sprints again and again and again and again until you can't do another one, and you check your heart rate at that point. While this would make sense to be a more accurate way of finding your maximum heart rate, to me, it just seems like it's unnecessarily risky. I'm always concerned about whether or not I'm going to be able to hold up, and if I'm going to be putting myself at risk for injury. And something like this, while I may cardiovascularly be able to keep going, if my muscles can't keep up, I'm gonna hurt my muscle. Or if I push my muscles too hard and I end up hurting my calf or my hamstring, it really isn't worth it to me. So that's why I think one of the biggest concerns is how do you properly identify what your max heart rate is? The next step is walking into the other half of it where you want to identify what intensity you want to use, and then you just take a percentage of your maximum heart rate. Let's say you could calculate your maximum heart rate accurately and safely. The information out there that I found on identifying what intensity levels correspond with what percentage of max heart rate really varied widely. I've got four tables right here, and these were very minimal research that I did to get this information. Very real quick searches, and I just kind of looked around, and I didn't have to search far and wide for this information. The first one doesn't even have any zones on it and any percentages on it, so it's ultimately useless, but it still calls itself a heart rate zone training monitor, or a heart rate zone training chart. The next three they at least give us some percentages. But you can see they even have different. Some of them have 4 zones, some of them have 5 zones, some of them have 3 zones. So it really is difficult to understand what is what. Looking at them, they do vary widely. The only chart on here, table number 4, that actually has one that's called the target zone. If you look at that target zone, it's such a wide range that if you were to take somebody who's 35 years old, using that standard 220 minus 35 to get their max heart rate, now you're looking at a range from 120 to 155. And that is quite a wide range. And then to go back to the original point, I'm older than 35. And when I'm running my 5 miles, I feel like I'm pushing myself. It takes me a little bit over 40 minutes, between 40 and 45 minutes. And I'm pushing myself, but I feel good. I feel like I'm in a good, safe zone, and I'm not in a dangerous place to be. And my heart rate sometimes gets up to 177, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at and saying, okay, I don't think that some of these numbers and some of these tables are really giving us an accurate way to even measure the intensity. So at the beginning of this, I did say, though, that I think there is going to be an opportunity for me to utilize heart rate monitoring in my training. Again, it is too logical, and it makes too much sense to me that monitoring my heart rate isn't going to give me some sort of good information. So what I'm going to do is, essentially, I've been paying attention to what my heart rate is at when I'm running. And my higher intensity workouts are the 5-mile runs that I'm doing throughout the week. And I'm monitoring my heart rate during that. And sometimes it'll get up to 170, 175. I checked it at the very end when I increased the intensity for the last half mile a little extra even, and it got up to 177. Now, that is pretty intense. That's pretty high for me. But I paid attention to it, and looking over the last couple of weeks and monitoring my heart rate as I go, it really does seem to be around those 5-mile runs. By the end of it, my heart rate is usually in that 170 to 175 range. So I'm going to use that as a guidepost. If I'm running a 5-mile run and my heart rate is down at 150, maybe I can increase the intensity. Maybe I am a little bit more ready to move on and increase the speed on that 5-mile. Similarly, if something goes wrong and I'm running and I'm struggling, and I look down at my heart rate monitor and I see that it's at 190, I'll slow it down, I'll back it off, make sure my body feels okay. And then it's going to give me an opportunity to go back and sort of identify, okay, what happened that day? What workouts did I do recently? Was something impacting this workout, to see if I need to change something? So that is how I plan to utilize my heart rate monitoring. One of the things that I did look at was my recovery rate. That's something else that I'm going to be keeping an eye on after one of my workouts. And I've got the pictures of my heart rate monitor here. You can see I was at 177 beats per minute when I finished my workout. And then less than 5 minutes later, I had dropped down under 100 beats per minute. So I feel like that was a good drop for a 5-minute span. And then about 20 minutes after I finished my workout, I was down around 75. So I feel like that's a good zone for me to be in, where I'm able to recover in that range and that time frame, where I'm back to under 100 and then I'm back to 75 or so. I feel like that is what I'm going to be able to utilize this information for. So that is the heart rate monitoring conversation. I wanted to kind of put something out there. I think a lot of the details, and if you get too hung up on some of the exact numbers, there may be some difficulty. So as always, I'm going to say, I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to listen to how my muscles feel. I'm going to listen to how my heart feels. I'm going to listen to how if I'm feeling dizzy, then something's going on, right? So I'm going to pay attention to everything. And the heart rate monitoring is another data point for me to pay attention to, but it's not going to be the end all of how I train. So that is everything on heart rate monitoring. As I mentioned last week, we are doing the Tough Mudder at the end of April. Please check out enduranceocr.com. And in the middle of the homepage, there's that button, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, to go to the webpage, the GoFundMe, to donate to that cause. Battle Buddy 3-Gun is an amazing cause. Jeff Combs, Jack Smith do a great job, so please help them out. And then next week, I am going to be back with another update talking about a subject that I have kicked a can down the road again, as far as I feel like I can. And I'm going to be talking about my nutrition. So keep that in mind for next week, and I will see you guys then.